Hey, poker people, it's Sky Matsuhashi, and this is the Smart Poker Study Podcast. In episode 152 last week, I discussed the importance of having a growth mindset within poker and when practicing your hand reading skills. It's poker study time, y'all. Thank you for all that you do. This podcast has seen tremendous growth in 2017, and it's all due to you subscribing, tweeting, favoriting, leaving iTunes comments, and of course, telling a friend. So thank you very much. I appreciate it. Alrighty, we are breaking away from the minimum effective dose content this week to bring you 3 very good questions. If you read Volume 1 of How to Study Poker, you might remember a quote that I put in there. The quote goes, "The quality of your life is determined by the quality of your questions." And that was by Dr. John DeMartini. And I love that quote. And the same can be said when it comes to our poker journey. The quality of our poker studies and our play will improve if we're asking and seeking the answers to better questions. That's what these Q&As are all about. If you listen or watch Gary Vaynerchuk on YouTube or his podcast or anything, you know that the most valuable part of his speeches and his talks are when he's taking questions from the audience and giving his real-world actionable answers to those questions. And that's what I want to do with these Q&As. I am taking your pertinent questions, the ones that you email me about, the ones that are plaguing you. I take those questions and give you answers that, well, the goal is that they're going to help you. So let's get to it. Please visit the show notes page for everything I discussed today, along with screenshots and links at www.smartpokerstudy.com/pod153. And while you're there, please sign up for the weekly boost for exclusive poker strategy that I email directly to you. Alrighty, gambate!
And now for our feature presentation.
So this first email came in from MK. He said, "Hello, Sky. After doing a few game tapes, I've been thinking to upload a few videos on YouTube. My goal with this would be just to make some friends and connections with more advanced players, to get feedback and just to get out of my comfort zone. I hope that would help with self-confidence. The problem is, I have never done videos before, except for the few game tapes. It still feels very awkward and uncomfortable speaking to myself. My English is not as good as I'd like it to be. My delivery is horrible. I contradict myself sometimes. It doesn't sound like I have any confidence in what I am saying, and I feel insecure. How would you go about it? Did you have any problems like that? It seems to come naturally to you. Any tips or suggestions to avoid embarrassing myself? Or am I overthinking it?" Well, thank you very much for that email and all those great questions, MK. And I am super stoked to hear that you've started doing game tapes for yourself. Those are, like I said in Volume 1 of How to Study Poker, that is the most underutilized yet beneficial study technique out there. So please continue, MK. But I did have the same reservations that you did when I started putting my stuff out there in video and podcast and article form. And here's the thing. It'll take time for your video skills to improve. So the longer you wait, the longer until you become comfortable at it. You know, one of the best slogans of all time and a rule that I live by is just do it. So MK, you just got to do it. Just get started right here. And I've got 3 things for you to keep in mind. Number 1, you can choose what to put out there. So if you create a video, watch it, and then you end up hating that video, just don't release it. You know, maybe it's 30 minutes wasted, but oh well, at least you had the experience of recording the video, speaking through your thoughts. Now you just ditch it and take what you learned from making that video and make the next one. If you put out a video and then you realize it's not something you want others to see, YouTube makes it really easy just to take it down. And the second thing for you to keep in mind, you can approach this with the idea that you're documenting your journey. You can even mention this in your videos or in your YouTube bio. You don't want to act like a seasoned coach putting content into the world. What you want to do is act like a player who's working on their game and wants to connect with other players, just like you told me in that email. You can even, you can name your YouTube channel something like MK's Poker Journey. And at the beginning of each video, you can say something like, "I'm just a poker player who is obsessed with improving his game, and these videos are documenting that process." Nice and simple, right? You're just documenting. You're not trying to teach anything. If you watch Gary Vaynerchuk, like I mentioned earlier, you know exactly what I'm talking about. He's big on documenting the journey. And you can make your channel all about documenting your poker journey. And the third thing I want you to keep in mind is be genuine. You said it seems like this stuff comes naturally to me. I simply just try to be myself at all times, and I discuss the things that I truly believe. When you're genuine with your audience, they're more forgiving and understanding. And if you do make mistakes, even if you do contradict yourself, so what? Somebody points it out, you say, hey, thanks for pointing that out. In the next video, you correct it. Or within the comments of the YouTube, when somebody points it out, you correct it right there. I mean, totally up to you. Just be genuine. And good luck, MK. And please let me know when you post your first video. I will watch it and I'll leave a nice comment. And for anyone else listening as well, if you create a YouTube channel, start putting your content out there, start documenting your journey, please let me know. I would love to check it out. Alrighty, on to question number 2 right here. It comes from Chuck. So Chuck sent in an email after listening to an episode where the show notes confused him. I'm going to summarize it here for you. He said when he went to the show notes page, like I always recommend in every episode, he expected to see something labeled show notes and for it to be like pretty easily expressed, like easily understandable as to what the show notes were. But that's not what he found. He saw the headers and they're not clickable. He saw the timestamps and didn't really know what they meant. Like when you see 3 minutes, like 3:00, when you see a timestamp in the show notes. And I can't recall ever explaining my show notes. So I'll take this opportunity to do so. And thank you very much, Chuck, for sending in this email, giving me this opportunity. So every podcast that I put out has a show notes page. I'm looking right now on my computer screen. I'm looking at the show notes page for episode 151. And you can follow along as I explain the show notes. And you could go to www.smartpokerstudy.com/pod151. So at the top of the page, you'll see the episode image with a short description of what the episode is about. Below that is the podcast player, so you can listen or download directly from the show notes page. You don't need iTunes or any other kind of podcatcher. Just go to the website. Below that is a promo for the prior episode, and that's just there to promote, other content on my website. Below that is where the show notes begin. And this is where the good stuff is. In the show notes, you'll find almost a complete transcript of what was said in the podcast. You can copy the words into your own Word document, cut them down to the most important, like the meat of the episode, and save them as your notes on the subject. Now, if you're looking at the show notes for episode 151, the first heading there says, "What is Flopzilla?" with a timestamp of 2 minutes, 25 seconds. This means that at 2 minutes, 25 seconds into the episode, I answer this question. So it's basically the first segment of the episode, the first strategy or study segment of the episode. And within that segment, I mentioned the hand reading video I embedded in the show notes, and you can see it right there, below some of that text there. And the next header reads, "The 4 benefits of Flopzilla for hand reading practice," with a timestamp of 4 minutes. So at 4 minutes into the episode, I start to discuss this stuff. As you scroll through the show notes, you'll see the screenshots that I reference within the podcast. Poker, it is such a visual element or such a visual medium, and sometimes it really helps to see what I'm discussing. That's why I put so many screenshots into my show notes. And as you scroll down through the page, you can see all the blue headers, the dark blue colored headers. They're just breaking up the entire episode into segments. Eventually, you'll reach the challenge with the timestamp there as well. And everything below the challenge is the support the show information, where I give shout outs to supporters along with links. And then below that, you'll see how to find and contact me in various ways. And finally, a plug for the next episode at the very end. So all of my show notes give ways to listen to the podcast, to download it, to follow along as you listen, to learn from the different screenshots to get a visual aid to what I'm saying. Like I said before, you can even copy and paste or print them for your own learning. The show notes are another way to make the podcast more valuable to listeners. That's why I do them. I've mentioned Volume 1 of How to Study Poker a couple times already, and it is available for you in every single format on Amazon.com or Amazon.ca, Amazon.uk, whatever Amazon you're at. It's an ebook, paperback, and audiobook. So please leave an honest review and send the review to me. I would love to read it on air and give you a little shout out by name for supporting the show. And of course, we all know reviews help spread the word. And a few shout outs today. So, first off, Custudius gave me some great show feedback about my tonality, and I'm trying to incorporate it starting today. So, thank you very much, Custudius. You've opened my eyes and my vocal cords to the world of, tonality and voice control. So, thank you very much. I am working always to improve this podcast. And of course, a huge thanks to Charles Ogle, who purchased the Smart HUD recently. He's using it to improve his game, to improve his poker play, to read more into his opponents, into their stats, and to exploit his opponents. And of course, Keith Feifel decided to support me with a monthly contribution on Patreon. Thank you so much, Keith. I really, really do appreciate it. It's people like you, Charles, and Custudius that keep me going. So thank you very much for your support. And if anybody else wants to support in the ways that Charles, Keith, and Custudius did, just go to the show notes for various ways to do it. Alrighty, back to class, poker people. So the third question today is about improving your turn play, or post-flop play and turn play. And it comes from Johan Cederland. And he said, very simply, I need to improve my post-flop play, especially the turn. Well, that's a great area to focus on, Johan. Thank you very much. For improving post-flop play, there are a few things that you can do. First, I want you to make this commitment. I will do one full hand reading exercise every day for 66 days using Flopzilla and an old hand from my database that went to Showdown. Now, I know that is a huge commitment, but you want big gains in your post-flop skills, right? I know that you do, Johan, and everyone else does as well. Well, you're not going to get it without lots of hard work. The reason for the 66-day commitment is because this is how long it takes, on average, to develop a new habit. So get to work. The sooner you start, the sooner you'll turn hand reading into a habit. Now, logistically, you should hand read your opponent's range one day, do your own range the next day, and both of you on the third day. Repeat this over and over. Opponent's range, your range, and then both ranges. And I've posted 3 videos in the show notes for today that show you how to do this. The first video shows me ranging my opponent's range from pre-flop all the way through the end of the hand. The second video is my own range. Of course, I can see my hand as I'm reviewing hands, but I think about in this spot right here, what is my entire range? Sure, maybe I 3-bet with pocket queens, but what other hands am I 3-betting with? I'll start with that range, pre-flop, and then I'll narrow it through the streets. And then on the third day, the third video that you'll see here in the show notes is me ranging both ranges. I range my opponent and myself throughout the hand. Now, this type of practice will help you understand the ranges, range versus hand, and range versus range equities. Plus, by analyzing yours and your opponent's post-flop decisions, you'll have a far greater understanding of what different plays and bet sizes mean throughout the different streets. When it comes to turn play specifically, you really need to assess why you're making the play you're making. By the turn, the pot has grown, so any mistakes made here are more detrimental than mistakes made pre-flop or on the flop, because it's very simple. Bigger pots equals bigger mistakes. So you need to know why you're doing what you're doing. If you're betting as a bluff, you should have their range in mind and be able to name many hands that they can fold here. If you're going for value, you should be able to name plenty of hands that they're calling or re-raising with. If you're on a draw still and you're thinking about calling, make sure the pot odds math is in your favor. You've only got one more chance to hit your draw when you're on your turn. And if you're paying just way too much to see it, then you're better off just folding. And don't forget, even though you're on a draw, you can still play aggressively and possibly bluff them off their hands. Turn raises look super strong, as we all know, and if the situation is right, you can use this to your advantage and blow the turn better off of their hand. And sometimes if you don't know what to do, then really you're better off just checking or folding, or check folding once they bet after you check. You just don't want to commit chips to a pot when you're just not sure what range your opponent is on. You're not sure if they'll fold, if they'll re-raise you, if they'll just call. You just don't take the chance. If you are truly flummoxed by the situation, just check or fold. And one other thing, back in episode 134, I discussed comparing ranges and board textures, and I gave everyone a spreadsheet to use to improve this part of their hand reading understanding. So please visit the show notes page at smartpokerstudy.com/pod134, and you can get the spreadsheet that I'm discussing right there. Good luck with your hand reading challenge and improving those turn skills, Johan.
Challenge!
Here's my challenge to you for this episode. there's no better challenge you could take up. Commit to 66 days of handreading practice using showdown hands from your database and Flopzilla. Do one hand per day. The opponent's range first, your range the next day, then both ranges on the third day. Repeat this cycle over and over. This will revolutionize your game. I'm looking forward to hearing from you if you take me up on this challenge. Now it's your turn to take action and do something positive for your poker game.
Now get it on.
This episode isn't complete until you head to the show notes page at www.smartpokerstudy.com/pod153. Go there for all the different links and videos that I discussed in today's podcast. Thank you so much for listening today. If you can type or say the words Smart Poker Study, you can find me on Twitch, YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and now on Anchor. You can also hear the show on your Amazon Echo device. Just tell it to play the Smart Poker Study podcast on TuneIn. And of course, just like those questions I received today, send me an email to sky@smartpokerstudy.com. Alrighty, poker people. Next week in episode 154, I'll continue the hand reading MED. It's going to be class 4, and I'll discuss asking the best questions to get the best answers while hand reading. Remember what Dr. DeMartini said: the quality of your life is determined by the quality of your questions. Word of mouth is the best advertising, so thank you very much for sharing the show with other poker people. Your sharing and caring is what helps us grow. Until next time, study smart, play much, and make your next session the best one yet. I want it loud as hell. I want the world.